Welcome to Read the Book First, a book to movie adaptation podcast. Today we are doing something a little bit different, as in we're not talking really about a book. We're going to only be talking about Christopher Nolan's 2026 film, The Odyssey, which everyone's heard about probably by now, and that's okay. But I'm so excited, especially because one of my dear friends, Alexa, is here to join us. Thank you, Alexa, for joining.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Um, Alexa and I went to high school together, which seems like we were just talking
A
about feeling
trillion
old.
years ago. If
Lordy.
we're talking about ancient history,
Oh,
oh,
oh.
yeah, that's also ancient history.
Yes. Alexa, I forget, you got specifically a degree in classics, right?
Yeah, so I got like a joint bachelor's in classical studies, and ancient Greek. I don't work in anything classics related, now that I'm out of university, but it is
Hmm.
still something that I really care about and I'm
Yeah.
really passionate about. So yeah, I'm really glad to be here.
We were, texting because the Odyssey was coming out, and I was like, who do I know that's going to have thoughts about one, a Christopher Nolan movie, and two, the Odyssey? And I was like, Alexa, immediately.
Yeah.
And also, side note, if you are wondering why Alexa kind of sounds like she has a Kiwi accent, when you're like, Janessa, you didn't grow up in New Zealand. Why is that? It's because Alexa lives in New Zealand and has for many years. So,
Yeah, I got my degree in New Zealand and
yes.
it's all colored by New Zealand. Not that that's actually a big deal or anything, but there's an interesting classics community down here in Australia and New Zealand, so it's
Hmm.
been an interesting way to learn about classics. But yeah, I've lived here for a while.
Sometimes when you say certain words, I'm just like, oh yeah, New Zealand. But then other times you sound like just how you do when we were 16. I
Yeah.
mean, my version of that is now I say y'all
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah. It's funny though, because when I go back to Alaska, like when I was there in 2024, like if they knew me from high school, that was fine. But if they didn't know me, they did not realize that I was from the US, which was
Hmm.
really strange because, when I come to New Zealand, everybody's like American, and so I'm like I'm like, well, what do I sound like?
Yeah,
My
this
whack
is
ass
funny.
accent.
It's
Yeah.
fun. I love it. I love it. Anyways, The Odyssey. So going into this, here's my Christopher Nolan knowledge. I have seen the Batman movies that he did. I have
Mhm.
seen what's the one about dreams?
Oh, Inception.
Inception. I've seen Inception
Yeah.
once. I saw Dunkirk twice in theaters, probably because Harry Styles,
Justified.
as you do.
Yeah.
And then now I've seen this. That's the only Nolan movies I've ever seen. So
Mhm.
I'm not a big like Nolan fan, nor am I a Nolan hater. I'm
You're
like
not a
Nolan
Nolan head.
indifferent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
In
kind of
different settings.
apathetic about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen Memento, but that was like a trillion years ago. I've seen Inception, I've seen The Dark Knight, Dunkirk, and now The Odyssey. I
Okay.
think if anything, I previously was a Nolan whatever,
Hmm.
very, very middle of the road Nolan
Hmm.
person. Now after seeing The Odyssey, I'm a conflicted person because he knows how to make a really stupendous film, like a
Yes.
real spectacle on the screen. And a 3-hour film is nothing because he makes it so lively and, point by point by point. Um, it's really interesting. But like he cannot write women. And in general, to be frank with you, I'm not sure he can write.
Yeah. I
Mm,
think I agree, and I think because of his being such a big wig now in the film world, he gets all this permission to do wild things.
mm,
And I appreciate that, like the choices he makes production wise,
yeah.
especially with this movie, because he has access to all this. I really enjoy every behind the scenes I've seen of this movie. I've
Mm,
been like, whoa, movies are awesome. This is so good. And then
yeah.
when I really think
Cinema
about the minute,
rules.
yes. And then
Yeah.
the little minute things about the Odyssey, I'm like, oh, wait, I thought I loved this. I thought this was great. Oh, not that it was horrible. I went and saw it
Yeah.
twice. I paid money
Yeah.
twice
Yeah.
because I live now in Southern California, which is
Mm.
wild. I am close enough to one of the IMAX movies that can play the IMAX 70 millimeter,
Oh,
so I was able to see
as
that.
Nolan intended.
And then I saw just the basic normie version, and
Hmm.
I will say the 70 millimeter was cooler. And like I kind
Yeah.
of hate that because the ticket was $30.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
think that's like $60 New Zealand
Yeah.
dollars. That's
Uh-huh. It
crazy.
was like I would only do that for like a movie shot
Yeah.
100% in IMAX, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't do that for any other movie except for
Yeah,
maybe Pride and
you
Prejudice.
wouldn't do
But
it for
like
like Grown-ups too or
no.
anything like
Or
that. Yeah.
Minions.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you because like they gave him a huge budget for this and
Hmm.
he did not waste a dollar. You can also tell that he didn't invest a whole lot of money into his writing. I mean, spoiler alert, that's kind of
Yeah.
my gist for the whole this whole episode is that I didn't love the writing. But I think like if we think about, certain installments in terms of, Troy and the spectacle on the beach and storming the city, that was shot very beautifully. It was a very like action packed. Everything was meaningful. Every shot that he took was meaningful. Every way that he filmed it and framed it and stuff was all meaningful and it led to a kind of a greater narrative. And so that worked, and I really liked the Cyclops sequence. I think that was probably my favorite part of the film, which I did not think I would ever say because I kind of didn't care for it in like
Yeah. In
the
the
actual
story.
myth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I always felt like, Odysseus has the whole thing where he's like, I'm nobody, and then that's how they sneak out underneath like the belly of
Hmm.
the sheep and the rams. And the Cyclops is blinded and he's saying, like, nobody hurt me. I thought like, sure, that's clever, but like, okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm I've moved on. But I felt like how Nolan did it in this version with like how he characterized the Cyclops was
Hmm.
fantastic. I
Yes.
think that was a huge puppet, which is
Hmm.
phenomenally done.
Well, so they had a big animatronic puppet that the actors were
Mm,
acting against, but then that is one of the few things that there's only a little bit of CGI in this movie. And
okay.
that is one of the things that later on they did make it to be a little bit, because if you look at the puppet itself, the limbs are like not
Yeah, it is a
connected. It's
bit.
more
Yeah.
marionette,
Yeah.
which makes sense because it's huge. And that's one of the things I think this movie I loved is that because he was like, I'm gonna go full ham and we're gonna do practical everything we can. And I think
Mm,
that was really one of the strengths because like Nolan has this like reputation of kind of being a bit of a hard ass on set, right? It's
mm.
like he's like
Yeah, no Ugg
no
boots.
Uggs on step. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of in my head is like, oh, it's a kind of a red flag. But at the same time, as like a white man making everyone,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the film world, not a great history of white men doing that. But the result we get is essentially a movie for 2026 that's like old Hollywood combined. Like the only thing to me
Yeah.
that's missing is the dialogue and the women, with
Yeah.
the next one, it's like one and a half, two exceptions.
Mm.
They'll for me at least,
Which
we'll get there,
which we'll get to.
which we'll get
Yeah.
to, yes. But I think how big and like the spectacle of it all, I loved that. And that's what made me
Mm.
really enjoy the movie. And I agree the like everything on the beach, everything with Troy, every time we had the flashback, um, to Troy, it was just the way it was filmed and knowing that they didn't use artificial lights. They created
Yeah.
new types of lights, knowing that this IMAX camera, they couldn't, see the actors across each other. So they made a
Yeah.
mirror system to they had to act to mirrors. Like it only recorded
That
six
blows
minutes
me
at a
away.
or six
Yeah.
seconds at a time or something bonkers. And if you look at it, and the second time I watched it, I like when the boring kind of dialogue parts, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start
Yeah.
counting.
Yeah.
And almost every 6 seconds, this
Oh
scene would
wow.
shift. So like I think in that way, he is kind of like, to use the word visionary, because he understands
Mm.
how to craft and produce. I just think he needs a
Yeah.
better writing partner.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's good for him to know his limits, which I feel really silly saying as, some random chick in New Zealand. But like,
Yeah.
I've never made a motion picture. But I sort of think like, if he's got so much of it, then it doesn't take away, his glory, or it doesn't take away his accomplishments by saying, I've also hired a script writer or
Yeah.
even a
Or
script
a
doctor,
team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a team of people who can help me,
I still
achieve
wrote
the
most
vision
of
I have.
this. Say this
Yeah,
made that, like you need someone to
yeah.
punch up the stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought like the Cyclops scene, I think, is the one that has really stayed with me because it was so haunting. Like,
Hmm.
I think, and this is maybe because I've consumed a lot of like classically based media, but I think when I think of the Cyclops, I sort of envision, kind of kind of like a fat, pudgy, tall guy with one eye.
Kind of
Is
like a
that kind of the
dummy.
yeah, is that kind of like a
Hmm.
Disney Hercules sort of
Yes,
Cyclops
yes.
version? Yeah. So when the Cyclops like finally made its appearance, the whole framing of it, where it's like the Cyclops, at least for the first few minutes, isn't really the focus of the camera, but you just see this like haunting thing that's sort of on the edge of the screen, and like you can't get a good focus on it, and the men are hiding from it. And then finally you kind of emerge into going, oh, that is the Cyclops.
Hmm.
And it's disturbing, and it's yeah, alarming, and the way it speaks is really almost
Hmm.
upsetting, and I think that's really cleverly done.
Yeah. Nolan has talked a lot about how he really took inspiration from Guillermo. I can't
Mm. Guillermo del
help me with.
Toro.
Thank you. And,
Yeah.
King of Monsters and
Yeah, and like Pan's
practical
Labyrinth and
monsters.
stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think with that you can really tell. And there's also, I forget the painting. I looked it up. I should have written it down.
Are you
Um,
thinking of Francisco Goya's Saturn
the
Eating His Son?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, where
He
it's
talks,
that.
he references
Yeah.
that painting that he was inspired by that painting, which makes sense of this version of the Cyclops being kind of like
Hmm.
this being that looks like it was smudged together. Like
Yeah.
his, because when we think of a Cyclops eye,
Because
we
the
think of it
face.
symmetrical like ours, but really it's
Yeah.
like 90 degrees
Yeah,
turned.
it's like twisted, and yeah.
Yeah, and like the
Yeah.
nose is also twisted and stuff. And I thought that was a really interesting take on the Cyclops. I like that it doesn't speak whatever American English all these actors
Yeah.
are speaking, which like
Yeah.
people made a big deal. Okay. People made a big deal
Oh
about all
yeah.
the actors speaking American English. And like I think either they were going to do American English or they were going to do British English, right? Those are the choices.
Mm.
They're not going to make this Hollywood movie
They're
in
not gonna do it
actual
in ancient
Greek.
Greek.
Like
Yeah.
what? Like I don't know why people are so upset about that. And I was like, I think it's easier for most actors. We'll talk about one who maybe wasn't that easy. Most actors to do a decent American accent than most actors to do a decent British accent and the
Yeah.
same British accent,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. The
So
same dialect. Yeah.
yeah, it's fine. Have you watched any other movie set in ancient times from Hollywood? Like, have you watched Ben-Hur, my guy? They
Yeah.
talk not like they're living in that time period. Like,
Yeah.
anyways, but I like that the Cyclops doesn't speak the same language
Yeah.
they did. Hmm.
I watched something on TikTok that like translated the Cyclops crying, because well, not translated, but it clarified that Cyclops crying scene, because I hadn't realized that the Cyclops was saying, Father Poseidon, I have been
Hmm.
hurt,
Hmm.
seek vengeance. Yeah, that's not verbatim, but basically seek
Something.
vengeance. Father Poseidon, I am hurt. Um, and I didn't realize that. I thought it was just crying, but it was really interesting how Nolan had like morphed, the standard speech into
Hmm.
this kind of, I don't know, like harmonic, deep, you can almost hear exactly what he's saying,
Hmm.
strange sort of thing. Um, which yeah, I thought was a really creative choice.
Yeah. In a very Christopher Nolan way, I think, and I think it works with the Odyssey because he does
Yeah.
not like a plot line that is A, B, C, and then D. He does not
Yeah.
like that. He likes it all wimbly wombly. And
Mm.
I think it worked really well for this because in the actual, the poem, it is, told by a person telling someone and then that person hearing a little bit more and more, right? It's not necessarily chronological, in the
Yeah, I
classic
mean,
way.
yeah, that's an interesting thing that you bring up actually, because the Odyssey isn't like the epic poem itself isn't we start at the beginning. Here we're in
Hmm.
Troy, and then we move to here, and then it goes sequentially for 10 years. It isn't framed like that. Basically, it starts in Ithaca. Um, this introduction kind of to Telemachus, to Penelope, Telemachus going, "Hey, I miss my dad. Let's go find him."
Hmm.
And then he's got Athena in disguise helping
Hmm.
him get underway to go find his dad. And then we switch over, and then Odysseus begins telling his story, and so it evolves from there. And I think Nolan did a really great job of showing that it's not like a linear,
Hmm.
straightforward kind of telling.
Yes. And it works really well and it keeps the pace going, which I think is definitely needed in a 3 hour
Yeah.
movie. Like there are a couple
Yeah.
places that it kind of like slows down a little bit for me, mainly act two. I'm just like, come
Mm.
on, guys. I think it plays so well, and I think he does it, again, I've not seen his other recent movies, and I know a lot of people are comparing Oppenheimer to this movie because
Mm.
it's similar themes, similar
Oh yeah, I've seen
um
Oppenheimer as well. I forgot about that.
I saw Barbie. I didn't see
Mm.
Oppenheimer. But that's
I had
very
a
me.
Barbenheimer day. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
People are making a lot of comparisons, and I'm sure those are really good and valid, but I think he used his Nolan-ness with the timeline really
Mm.
well, and I don't think he overdid it, and I don't think he did it just because he can. I think that's one of the parts I think in the film that it really ties into the theme going with Odysseus throughout it. Um, that is one thing I ended up really liking. Should we talk about Telemachus and Penelope in the
Yes.
beginning?
Yeah, I think we should.
Um, so Tom Holland, as a person, anytime a clip I see him in, I want to be his bud.
Mm.
Like he seems
He
like a
seems
great
like a
dude.
really cool guy.
Yeah, he is not a good Telemachus.
No, that's the thing that I think is a shame as well, because it seems like he's a very like genuine individual, a very
Yeah.
cool guy. I've watched the interviews with him during like the press screenings for this, but also with Spider-Man coming out.
Hmm.
It's just a shame that like he's very cool, but he doesn't quite nail Telemachus. The
Hmm.
thing the thing that really sealed it for me was, you know, I guess spoilers for anyone who's listening, but hopefully you've seen the film by this point.
Yeah.
But is towards the end of the film where, he's upstairs in the palace and, there's that hole that's been
Hmm.
broken through in the ground. And he's defeated Melanthius, I think, who was like the evil cowherd, and so now he starts throwing weapons through the floor to his dad. And the thing that like killed me was, he like looked through the hole and he was like, "Dad," and just
Hmm.
chucked a bunch of swords and stuff down to Odysseus. But it just felt so comical in a way that I knew it was not intended to be comical.
Hmm.
And I don't necessarily mind like the American English usage in the film, but I think it's these moments where you've got him being like, "Dad, catch," or something like
Hmm.
that, just feels
Yeah.
really out of place.
Someone on, Threads or whatever, TikTok said
Mm,
that Tom Holland sounded like a teenage boy in a 90s sitcom. And
yeah.
that's the issue. There needs to be way more angst in Telemachus. Like he
Yes.
has daddy issues, capital
He's
D,
never met
daddy
his
issues.
dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Odysseus was there when he was a baby, but that doesn't really count.
yeah, like two, right? It's or
Yeah.
something like a
Yeah.
toddler. And
Yeah.
there's no like, iPad to FaceTime on. So like so that was a real bummer for me the whole time because I
Yeah.
wanted to like him so much, but it was just not good, especially because he's paired up almost all his scenes with Anne Hathaway as Penelope, who
And
I
she
think killed it. I
she
think.
killed it. I love Anne Hathaway. And I've like obviously I've been a fan of hers since, the
Yeah,
Princess Diary
Princess of
days,
Genovia.
naturally.
We
Yeah,
are
that is my
citizens.
queen.
Yes.
Yes. But even in this, like as well, it's arguably a vastly different type of film, but she killed with it. I'm just kind of in awe that she did, like I think she balanced it really well. This like frustration at her place in the world, being a woman in a male-focused world, but also this frustration of, I really miss my husband. Naturally, it's been 20 years, I really miss him. But also, I kind of picked up this sense of like frustration around it's, that it sucks that she has to be dependent on him. It sucks that for her to have her full autonomy, she needs her husband to come home. And so
Hmm.
she's just so frustrated that, like, for her to like live her life, it has to be through the lens of another man.
Hmm.
And I think Anne Hathaway does that so well.
She was stunning. Not only like her acting when she was talking, but also her reactions were always excellent
Mm,
towards all the different characters she interacts with. She carries every scene she's in.
mm,
I totally agree with you. And we've talked about how Nolan did not write the woman well and the dialogue is bad. But whenever she was talking, I was like, oh, it's fine. Like I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna like reblog this on Tumblr if I was still on Tumblr. It's not
mm.
like that.
Yeah.
But like, I wasn't like rolling my eyes
Yeah.
necessarily. Whereas with the most of the other women, I was just like, oh my gosh, it could have what it could have
Okay.
been.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Mhm.
like if I think back to, all the women, all the various lines and stuff they had, I think in my mind, the two actresses who like crushed it in spite of, the poor script writing for women, it would be Anne Hathaway and Lupita Nyong'o.
Mhm.
Um, and I know like Lupita played two different characters, but so for those three characters, Penelope, Clytemnestra, and Helen, they were all fantastic. And Christopher Nolan didn't give them
Especially
enough like
Lupita. And she has two
yeah,
characters
enough
technically.
yeah, enough screen time, enough time to like flesh out who they are because they're big players in well, mainly Penelope is a big player in this, but obviously like Helen essentially haunts the narrative. I mean, when you think about Troy, you think about Helen. But then also I'm really biased towards Clytemnestra because I did my like big honors thesis thing on her killing Agamemnon. On it
Hmm.
wasn't it wasn't Homeric, her killing him. It was a different tragedy. But yeah, just basically focusing on the House of Atreus and
Hmm.
Clytemnestra killing her husband and the issues that that brought about. But so I think those are really three interesting women who kind of didn't get enough credit, but like the actresses who played them worked their asses off.
Hmm.
They worked with what they had and they made it
Yes.
really good, even though there wasn't a lot to work with.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I think I forget the actress's name off the top of my head, the woman who plays Cersei. I think
Oh yeah,
Cersei,
Samantha Morton, I think.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's yeah. Her dialogue with the men before Odysseus is there, not
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
right? I
That was
think
that was a really stilted and kind of
mhm.
strange choice in my opinion.
I think this version of Cersei is not an original reimagining of Cersei. Like I've not read the Cersei Madeline Miller book. Have you read that one?
Oh, it's really good. You should.
It's on my list. I'll get there
Yeah.
eventually. I've only read of those like recent reimaginations of the myths. I've read the Song of Achilles, which
Mm.
I didn't really
I haven't
like.
actually read that. I need to, but
I mean, I listened to
yeah.
the audiobook this years ago, so like who knows if I actually liked it. And I was teaching, so my brain wasn't really fully functioning. Who knows? Anyways,
Yeah.
side note.
Yeah.
But I I know this is version of Cersei is not like an original, wholly original take. And I think that the dialogue between Odysseus's men and Cersei at the beginning there was not good, but the acting she does through the
Mm.
really crappy dialogue, I think was outstanding. And I think that whole scene with the pigs is
Yeah.
amazing, especially because it is practical effects and animatronics. Like none of that is
That
CGI.
blew me away. When I was watching
Yes.
that, I was like, because I knew that bit about CGI. I didn't realize he had used a little bit. I thought it was fully
It's only like
non-CGI.
it's like
Um,
the things he used for CGI was the part of the Cyclops, not all of it, only part.
mhm.
and then the whirlpool, the inside of the
Oh, yeah.
whirlpool,
That makes
and
sense.
that's about it. Like it's
Yeah.
low CGI, but that one is like that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Cersei turning them into pigs, I watched like a behind the scenes, like, here's how we did it kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I thought that was like a really fantastic
Yeah.
interpretation.
Yeah.
Because I guess the way that I always pictured it in my head, and obviously I'm not like the arbiter of, what things look like in classics, but
Hmm.
I just always pictured it in kind of like a, swishing a wand kind of transformation,
Hmm.
a very like kind of modern witch and wizard sort of approach to magic.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's totally, totally clever, totally innovative that she would like coax them into what she considers their real form. I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting.
Yeah. I think it's super interesting, but also it does make me wonder, like, what does it mean if your real form's a leopard or a cheetah? Like,
It means you slay. Like,
like,
cool.
like you're really cool and you're trapped. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what if
Yeah, I
these
know.
people are like that? Those a side question I had when I was watching the movie. I was like, whoa, that pig, like, what? This is like, he should do a horror movie. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but wait, whose real form is a lion? I'm a Leo. Does that mean I'm really a
Yeah.
lion? Like, you know?
Do I count?
Yeah.
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 No, I mean that's a good point. Especially as well. Actually, now that we're talking about it,
Mhm.
something I thought was really interesting was the part of the Cersei scenes where Odysseus threatens to harm the crow,
Yes.
who is
The
technically
sister.
her sister. But I thought that was such an interesting addition because that's not in the myth.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you know who Cersei's sister is. She's a really interesting character herself. Her
Hmm.
name's Pasiphae, and she is the wife of King Minos. So,
Okay. Yeah.
we all know Minos.
Yeah.
He's of the famed, Minotaur
Minotaur.
fame.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so Pasiphae is interesting because she's interesting in her own right, but the here's her lore is she was married to Minos, and Minos did something to annoy and piss off Poseidon. And so Poseidon was like, hey, I hate that. I'm going to curse your wife to fall in love with this huge bull. And then, it's not just falling in love, it's a
Hmm.
physical attraction to this bull as well. That's a curse in itself because she falls in love with the bull. They consummate their relationship, and then she births the Minotaur. So
Hmm.
Cersei's sister is the mother of the Minotaur, and then Minos goes, "Oh my God, my wife had a
A
had
calf.
this monstrous baby. Yeah, she had a half human, half calf. What do we do with it?" And so then that's when he put it in the
Hmm.
labyrinth.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's sort of the lore there. And I like obviously I don't have an exhaustive knowledge of, every myth that's ever happened, but I
Yeah.
haven't seen any interpretation of Pasiphae becoming a crow,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I kind of that's one thing where I kind of don't get why that happened. Like why Pasiphae is a crow of all things and then she's trapped on Cersei's island. And I thought, maybe Nolan needed a figure that would like be vulnerable to Cersei, just so Odysseus could like use that to get his men out of the bind.
Yeah.
But because the whole thing is like Odysseus eventually convinces Cersei to let his men go back to their human forms.
Hmm.
But Nolan doesn't touch upon the fact that Odysseus and Cersei had a sexual relationship. Like he
Hmm.
was there for a year. They
Hmm.
were shacked up.
Hmm.
They were cozy. He was having the time of his life. And the men were just hanging out. Once they turned, stopped being pigs, everybody
Yeah.
just hung out. And Cersei was very I don't remember it verbatim, but she says something about like, we need to like consummate this agreement that we have here. And, according to some myths, not the Homeric Odyssey, but according to some other myths, that consummated relationship resulted in a son, and so then he's got this other son named
Hmm.
Telegonus, who
Hmm.
later will interact with Odysseus. But yeah, it's a lot of the Cersei stuff was cut down to fit what I felt was like I don't know, an interesting narrative from Nolan that ultimately was saved by Samantha Morton. Like if she wasn't Cersei, it would have been not
Yeah.
not very. It wouldn't have
If
gone very
she
well.
was if she wasn't Cersei and that stunt they do with the pigs wasn't as
Yeah.
awesome and play into this whole idea of what war turns men into, right? Which is the whole
Yeah.
theme
Yeah.
of this
Yeah.
movie is about the effects of war, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think if those two weren't so vital to those Cersei scenes, it wouldn't have, you're absolutely right, it would not have made sense. I mean, because because like Nolan's, I mean, do we want to talk about Odysseus? I guess.
Yes. I would
Okay.
love to. I
So
actually I wrote some notes and stuff as
I
well,
love, I
just to
love
gather my thoughts.
um Matt Damon as the casting of Odysseus, weird choice. I mean, a lot of the casting, it's
Yes.
like very big Hollywood, but like whatever, I can get past it for most of the reasons. Like I was like, hey, whatever, Matt
Mm.
Damon. Like I think he's a cool dude. Like when again in
Yeah.
interviews, I'm like, he seems like a cool dad. Like look at him go, you know?
Yeah.
Like
And I've liked him in other stuff, like in The
yeah,
Talented Mr. Ripley. He's great.
yeah, no, he's a good actor for sure. I just
Mm.
don't think he's Odysseus because when I just imagine in a different universe where we get Oscar Isaac as Odysseus, and then
Yeah.
the whole thing changes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, preach. I completely agree with you. And the first thing, like, I think, I don't remember when the news came out, but I remember when I first heard that the Odyssey was going to happen and that Matt Damon was going to be Odysseus. That was such a big ol', what? What do you mean? Because I guess I was viewing it through the lens of this film that he did a few years ago called The Last Duel, which is also a historic film, but it's based on like real life events, and it was done by Ridley Scott. It's a really interesting film. It's also got Adam Driver and Jodie Comer in it. But he plays a historic guy in that, and he was such a he plays like a loser husband basically in that
Mm-hmm.
film. And so I was, remembering him through that lens, and I was kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh God, how is he going to be able to pull off Odysseus?
Mm-hmm.
And I will be honest, I don't know if he nailed it in this. I think he acts stupendously. Like, I think the thing that needs to be made clear is that he is probably one of the top three strongest actors in this whole film. And he
Yes.
carries the film and he performs really well. But if you come back to it and you ask, well, but is he Odysseus? I don't think he is
Mm-hmm.
Odysseus.
Yeah.
I think he does a great job portraying someone who is scarred from war, who is haunted by the decisions he's made, who is impacted with, this heavy responsibility he's carried for 20 years. I can see that, written all over his face, and he does that really well. But to quote a Letterboxd review that I read a few weeks or a few days ago, and I really liked. It was from a woman who did classics with me as well. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh my God, shout out!" But she had written her review saying, "I do not believe Matt Damon's Odysseus is clever.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
do not believe he is cunning."
No.
And I was like, "Yes, that's it
Mm-hmm.
exactly."
I think Nolan wants us to think Odysseus is such a good guy that
Yeah.
got stuck in war that like because all the plot changes where he's like oh he because of the people of Ithaca, the men of Ithaca wouldn't go with Agamemnon, but he's like okay, we're gonna do lots so that way it's fair.
Mm,
Look at me being a good leader. War sucks,
yeah.
guys, but guess what, this is the best thing we could do. Like Nolan wants this like very clean version of Odysseus,
Mm.
and I think Matt Damon is a great version of that, of Nolan's
Like
Odysseus.
archetype. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's a good dad. He doesn't cheat on his wife knowingly, only when he's drugged with
Yeah.
Otis. Like
Yeah.
and like we don't even see that on screen, which like fair
Yeah.
enough, but also be a little bit more explicit so that we can have
Yeah.
a nuanced take. I don't know. I don't know.
Calypso is somebody we should we should talk about later.
We'll get
But
to
yes,
yeah. Um
please continue.
but I think he does a great job with the struggle of leadership, especially with I forget the actor Himesh who plays his
Oh,
right-hand
Himesh
man.
Patel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he did great as the like right-hand man who's like, what are we doing? Kind of like panic kind
Yeah.
of acting. And I think they played well together. I think the siren scene, his agony screaming, I think that was
Yeah.
excellent acting, you know? So I think he did the best job he could do as being a Matt Damon in a Nolan version of Odysseus. I think this version of Odysseus is just, I don't know what other word to use besides like neutered. Like,
Yeah. I think that's a really fair
yeah.
choice of words. Yeah, it's very like sanitized.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And it's because, if we go back to my favorite scenes, the Cyclops, like the whole point, like, and this is something I wrote in my notes as like, emphasize this, but essentially it's like Odysseus isn't, I guess, this like benevolent hero that Nolan wants him to be seen as. Odysseus is a complicated man. Like to quote Emily Wilson's opening to her
Yes, yes.
translation. He's a complicated man. And he's also a man who is a good leader, on one hand. But on the other hand, he is proud and he is cunning and he is clever and sometimes he's mean. Like if we think
Mhm,
about the Cyclops in the epic when they escape out of the cave and then he screams back to the Cyclops, my name isn't nobody. My name is Odysseus. And that's a huge display. I feel like it's like in big lights, but it's just a big way of indicating that this guy at the start of his journey is, arrogant, he's self-confident, and he doesn't understand that these kinds of traits are going to be harmful to him. Which is
mhm,
then we see the sequence of, the Cyclops goes to his dad and says, "Hey, Poseidon, like
mhm,
Odysseus is the guy who hurt me. Can you get vengeance for me?" And then
mhm.
Poseidon, sinks his teeth
Yeah,
into Odysseus and makes a 2 week journey home into
yeah,
a hefty 10-year
yeah,
journey home. But it's all because he has this like innate, yeah, cunning intellect, but he doesn't know when it goes too far. And so that's
yes.
something he has to learn on his
Hmm.
journey.
Yeah. And we don't see any of that, which like it bums me out because that would have been a fun version. I
Yeah.
think Matt Damon could have done it with good writing, which
Yes.
you know what I mean? So
I think it
then
always
we get
comes
into
back to that.
yeah.
It's that Scooby-Doo meme where you take the mask
Mhm.
off the guy and it's like just bad writing. We needed a stronger script.
Yeah, yeah, again, exactly. He does a great job in this version, but this version isn't it. Like,
Yeah. So you
yeah,
mentioned Oscar Isaac as like your
yeah.
your number one
But
Odysseus.
to
Do
be
you have any other
honest,
people you would consider?
I would cast Oscar Isaac in almost anything. So really, that's not me being
Put
like,
that
this is
man in every
good.
film. Yeah.
Shoot, I would go and pay $30 for almost any movie he is in.
Yeah.
I don't know, because like what kind of actors of that kind of age that have that much, you know, chutzpah?
Yeah. I have I have thought about this a fair bit. And to be honest, I do think it is kind of like a hard thing to answer. The conclusion that I came to though is, and this is kind of funny because he was recently in an Odyssey remake called The Return, but I think of Rafe Fiennes, um, or Ralph Fiennes,
Yeah, yeah.
as a good option there. Which is
Yeah.
funny because he kind of already was Odysseus, but
Yeah.
I think he has that kind of intellect that's necessary and that kind of, I don't know, wily cunning and stuff
Hmm.
that would work. But if not him, I also consider Ralph Ineson to be a good option. Um, he is
Look it up.
he's one of my favorite actors, but he's not in loads of like big stuff. But he he's been in Robert Eggers films. So he
Oh,
was in Nosferatu,
yeah,
he was
yeah,
in The
yeah.
Witch. Yeah, I think he has this like smart but almost like scary kind of energy to him, which I think would
Yeah.
would work for Odysseus.
someone who I think stole the screen every time were on screen was Elliot Page as Sinnoh.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like, okay, so we haven't really talked about like how everyone on the right slash f- conservative folks are like, this is the
Mhm.
woke Odyssey because God forbid a trans person has a job. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, get
Yeah.
over yourself. But I think, and also they're like dummies thinking that they're like it's all about Achilles. And I'm like, do you guys know Achilles like
I
was most likely
I was
like
like,
gay? Like, what do
my
you
brother
guys?
in Christ, but Achilles is not in the Odyssey.
I
That's what
know. I
from like a
know.
classics degree haver. I
Yeah.
was like, what are you talking about? That man
Yeah.
is not in the Odyssey.
Yeah.
What?
He died before the Odyssey takes place. Like he's dead,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Because the whole
Yeah.
heel thing
Yeah,
that
like not, do
happened.
you guys remember the Iliad? I mean, the answer is no. They don't
No, they don't.
remember the Iliad. But I mean, you're
Um,
right as well. Like
hmm,
Achilles was, frankly, he was probably bisexual,
yeah,
um but like the greatest love of his life was Patroclus,
yeah, yeah,
Like conservatives are quaking,
yeah.
like
The movie starts right. It starts with him on the beach, right?
mm,
That's like one of the
mm.
first scenes we get. I was like, oh, is that all? Like, I was like, oh, this whole big, of course, is a big hubbub to do, and Elliot Page had like 30 seconds, you know, on screen.
But
But then he
God,
comes
he
back,
killed it.
yes, and then later on in the Hades
Yeah.
scene with the dark
Yes.
sand, unbelievable. And
Genuinely, like top five performers from this film.
mhm,
Elliot, I don't know if I could like get more precise than top five, but
yeah,
Elliot Page is one of them
yes,
because I mean, you're absolutely true. Like I was really intrigued about, that setting the scene at the start of the film, where he's on the beach and he's just hanging out, eating an apple, and then the Trojans show up, and I was like, oh, this is going to be really interesting because I didn't know who he was playing, you
yeah,
know, until it was revealed. Um, and so I thought that initial scene of, him like trying to give the gift was done really well. But also it was, we've been here for 5 minutes and it was really heartbreaking to see,
hmm,
see him die at the hands of the Trojans. And so already you're like, I've been sat for 5 minutes, but I'm like, I'm feeling it. I'm already in the
hmm,
emotions. Elliot Page has made me, really buy into this character, and I met them, mere
yeah.
moments ago. And so that was done really well. But yeah, I mean, you've reminded me actually. I think the one scene that I liked more than the Cyclops was the Hades scene. Elliot Page stole the show. I know Agamemnon was there. I know Tiresias was there. Yeah, I know we laugh about Agamemnon. um, but
Sorry,
I,
I mean, it's so cool and also so dorky.
it's
Agamemnon's
so
outfit, it's
his
so
yeah,
cool. It does not
Agamemnon's
make
armor
it does not make
is
any sense.
so
And he's just stunting
dorky.
on them hoes, and I love it. It's
Yeah.
stupid.
He just is aura farming outside the gates of Troy.
Just
And then just
consistently.
stands like that scene where the gate opens and he just stands as all the men flood in around him. Is like, okay, okay,
Yeah.
Agamemnon. All
Yeah.
right. But yeah, even though the whole visit to Hades wasn't about talking to Elliot Page,
Hmm.
nonetheless, Elliot Page fucking ruled. And so like that really cemented, just like even though they had, a screen time of like 2 minutes, that really cemented um,
Yeah.
his role in
And
the film for me.
the whole Hades scene in general, I thought was so good. And finding again more about how they filmed it blew my mind because one, they did it in Iceland and then summertime, but
Yeah.
still in Iceland. So it's still cold because they're at dusk or sunrise. Like it's cold.
Yeah, and it's
And
like foggy and
they
yeah.
actually had the stuntmen under the rocks.
Yes. Yeah. They had like little snorkels.
Hmm.
I'm getting all
Uh-huh.
flustered because I'm so
Yeah.
excited. But they had little snorkels as they were buried under the sand, and then
Hmm.
they like clawed their way out of the sand.
Yeah.
That is so clever.
Hmm. What I also love is that every time you see like 1,000 people on the screen, there's
Mm,
actually 1,000 people there. And I
yeah.
love that. And they put a lot of stunt people, not just as like stunt doubles for the big actors, but they played a lot of the extras. Like the sirens were just stunt women that they had on set. They're like,
Hmm.
hey, y'all
Do
cool
you want to
just
sit
hanging on
on a
some
rock with
rocks?
seals?
Which
Yeah.
like I think that was a little bit like kind of lame for the sirens. Like I wanted some more respect on her like sirens in general. I mean, I
Yeah.
enjoyed the scene because the point wasn't that the sirens were like actually like interacting with them much. Like that wasn't
Yeah.
really the point. I get it. But also I was like, but I also appreciate from a production standpoint, like do like the restrictions he had, even though he had
Yeah.
everything at his fingertips. He's like, I'm gonna still restrict myself because I'm still a practical person,
Yeah.
you know? Like, and I appreciate
And
that
I
part.
think I think if every single bit had been dialed up to 11, like if every single stage of the journey had been dialed up to 11, it wouldn't have been as impactful. So I
Yeah.
understand the need to like, we lower the dial down to maybe a 6, here for the
Hmm.
sirens and blah
Yeah.
blah blah. And so it makes the journey a bit more,
Yeah.
fluctuating and interesting.
Yeah. Definitely. But yeah, the Hades scene, I think, is in the top probably 5 scenes for the movie for me. Like
Yeah.
it's just it was so just so good. And like, yes, they didn't touch all the different people they're supposed to talk to. Like he doesn't talk to
Yeah.
his mom. But like that's
Yeah, that's what I was disappointed with. But I
yeah.
also, it's kind of like, well, how do you introduce, like, here is his mom, and she died while
Yeah.
he was away. And, so how do you put that in? I get that
And his dad's
choice.
still alive, but he is not living at the castle because he's kind of losing his mind. Like, like there's all this
Hmm.
like minute, nuanced things that no one left out that I'm like, yeah, that's good that you left out. Then there's so much that
Yeah.
he left out that I'm like,
Yeah.
why?
I've read that scene specifically in the Odyssey a fair bit because, like, for a period in time, I considered doing my thesis on it and discussing that scene as an example of necromancy within the ancient world, because essentially that's what it is. Like, he
Hmm.
travels to Hades, but you have to, in order to get to Hades, you have to do this necromancy ritual, and it's one of the few options within Greek antiquity that shows it. So I thought, fabulous, I might
Yeah.
do my thesis on this. But the way that Nolan filmed it, like, I would say, is honestly quite accurate to how it's done in the epic. And just the bit, with the sheep and the shields, and having the spirits come up and drink the blood from the shields there. It was just done in such like a haunting and, as a nerd, a very accurate way that I appreciated the whole combination of it. But I think also the portrayal of Tiresias, as this blind prophet like dragging himself through the sand. Um, that was fantastic. Like, that was beautifully done.
Hmm.
And I don't know the actor's name who played Tiresias, but he was very commanding for only being on screen for like 2 minutes, and
Yeah.
just very commanding as like the authority on how to get home. Even for
Hmm.
people who may not know who he is, or may not know, you know, he's important for these reasons. You can
Hmm.
still tell, oh, this guy has authority.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I think it's done really well and like it helps differentiate the supernatural from the natural in
Yeah.
this like weird intermediate space that they're in. Do we want to talk about Calypso, I guess?
Yeah, that's a yes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
So
her. Yeah.
Calypso being Charlize Theron, I think that's silly casting. Like that's a waste of your
Yeah.
money. Like, yes,
Yeah.
she's a good actress, like, but like she's
She
not
uh, she
Calypso.
falls she falls into that category of like great actresses who didn't have loads to work with. But but I agree with you. She's not
She
Calypso.
she's not Calypso. The fashion was like weird, like H&M
Yeah, yeah,
bash.
I've seen memes about her wearing like a tortilla blanket. Somebody found like a tortilla blanket on Etsy, and they were like,
Yeah.
let me pick this up for
Hmm.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And like yes, the women like I think of all the women, I think she's the most mistreated by Nolan.
Mm,
Like, yeah, the dialogue's not good, but also she's literally just there to be a vessel for
mm,
Odysseus. Like as far as Penelope has tons of different things going on with her. Cersei a little bit. even the little bits of Helen has, a little bit of tension with the other characters and not just Telemachus or just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit more interactions. Whereas Calypso, she's just there to look hot and be like, remember,
Yeah. And be an
remember?
unpaid therapist.
Yeah.
Which is it's such a weird way of positioning her like that because honestly, Calypso is like an abuser, to be frank. Like
Yeah.
he is trapped on her island
She's
for
drugging him.
7 years. Yeah, and
Well, in
she's
this version,
like,
the Lotus Eaters are
yeah,
somewhere
the Lotus
else
Eaters
in
are
the epic.
in the epic, but yeah, I mean, even in the epic, like she is a predator, and she's purposefully keeping Odysseus captive on her island. Essentially just taking this approach of like, oh, I like him, I will keep him as like my pet husband, and I'll use
Hmm.
him for what I want, and that's a very comfortable life for me, and that's that. Um, and so when I saw the Calypso in this film, I was like, well, okay, no, like Calypso isn't, it's not, 7 years of therapy with her. It's not this kind of benevolent, oh, well, I was drugging you so you'd forget your pain. That was a really interesting choice that I think did not pay off at all, from Nolan.
Hmm.
Um, because she's meant to be much more malicious and malevolent. And the whole reason why he gets off the island, in the epic is because Athena's like, damn, we have been here for a while. Odysseus, come on, like, let's get a move on. I'll talk to Calypso. I'll have my dad talk to Calypso.
Hmm.
We'll come up with a little deal and then we'll get you on our way.
Yeah.
So through the gods, Odysseus is able to leave. And we don't really see that kind of,
Oh, yeah. We get like
yeah.
I didn't catch it the first time, but the second time I watched it, we do get a big, huge thunder roar, and then Calypso looks
Oh,
up, and that's towards the beginning of her like pushing him to remember. But
oh,
like it's so subtle, and
yeah.
which makes
But I
sense
think
for
as
the subtlety
well,
of the gods in this,
yeah. But
which
I think
I
as
I
well,
have
if we've got
complicated feelings about.
yeah, if we've got Zendaya, have her work in that kind of
Hmm.
negotiator role. Have
Yes.
her weigh in that respect.
Yeah. Um, so we haven't talked about Zendaya yet, slash Athena.
Mm,
And in the epic, Athena is an active role in both Telemachus
mm,
and Odysseus's journeys,
yes.
right? She's in almost every other scene, it seems like, at
Yeah.
saying, and then what? And then we go, and I'll do this, and remember to look
Hmm.
like a beggar and look in disguise,
Yeah.
keep doing that. Like she's like pushing the plot along. And here, like I think Zendaya did great for what she had, which was being
Yeah.
told to look pensive.
Yeah. Look pensive and disapproving.
Yeah, which she did great. Like she knows how
Yeah.
to do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I do think at first I was like very like as I was watching, I was upset. I was like, why isn't she acting? Why isn't Hermes helping him out with Circe? Like where
Yeah.
are the other gods? And like there are like
Yeah.
bits
Where's
of it.
he?
Like there's, the Cyclops talking to Poseidon. There's the crew members talking about Zeus and Poseidon.
Yeah.
Zeus's
And
laws said a
thunderclaps and
billion
stuff.
thousand times. We get it. Zeus's law.
Yeah.
Well, um, but
Yeah.
then Athena's just there and it's only him seeing her. And of course, the payoff, as you get to the end, is that she is portraying herself as a priestess who was beheaded that he did
Yeah.
not stop his men from doing, right? Like, and that is a direct, um, his guilt and his direct consequence for his trick of the
Yeah.
Trojan horse, of breaking Zeus's law. Like, and I do
Yeah,
think
it's
there
like a
is what,
manifestation of his
mhm.
guilt towards the Trojan people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that payoff is very well done in this. Like it does pay off that she's just sitting there looking disappointed all the time.
Mm.
But then I started thinking too hard about it because that's what I do. I have a podcast. This is why.
Yeah.
So we are led to believe that the gods do exist. We have all these mythical things, right? We have the Cyclops, we have these giant guys, we have Circe and the pig stuff, we have the
Yeah.
whirlpool and the what's the guy's
Yeah,
name?
Scylla the monster.
Thank you. So like
Yeah.
so we are full of mythical supernatural things. They went to Hades. Like there's supernatural shit going on constantly. But then we're
Yeah.
led to believe at the end, oh wait, it's just Odysseus and his PTSD and guilt. What if the gods don't exist? Wouldn't that be like a crazy idea? But in my head, I'm like, yes, that's cool at first, but then it negates everything we just watched. Like there needs to be more nuance in how they portray the Cyclops or how they portray
Yeah.
like all these things. Like if there was a quick flashback of what the actual memory was them just like pillaging a
Yeah.
shepherd or like, whatever, doing horrible things.
If we take this approach, there could be an angle of like how war changes your perception of stuff, and it changes
Yeah.
your perception of, fights and conflict, even if it's, really banal conflict. Like you said, there could be flashbacks to explain,
Hmm.
who the Cyclops actually is, or to
Hmm.
explain, yeah,
That
Dylan
storms are
heard this,
storms.
or yeah,
Yeah.
things like that. No, I
Yeah.
completely agree with you. The thing that I found about that, like Athena reveal, is it almost made me laugh a little bit because Athena is so anti-Troy. She hates the Trojans. So Athena wouldn't, haunt Odysseus by saying like, look what you did to the Trojans. Let that forever be on your mind. Because Athena was there going, yeah,
Hmm.
you know, let's pillage the city. She would be actively cheering for it. Um Athena is a really complicated figure, but ultimately, like, to put it simply, she hated the Trojans. So
Hmm.
she wouldn't be sad that a bunch of people were killed, due to the Trojan horse and due to, Greek soldiers sneaking in and killing a bunch of people. It is really interesting, I think, as well, when you look at like which gods were on what sides during the Trojan War. Athena was very firmly on the Greek side. Aphrodite, for example, was on the Trojan side. Choices like that. But it yeah, I think it is an interesting storytelling choice. Like, I think if Nolan had created the Odyssey out of his mind, like if this were a strictly, just an original product that he had created, it would
Hmm.
have been a really inventive choice. It would have been an
Hmm.
interesting twist how this goddess is actually, is actually this manifestation of guilt. But when it's a part of, 3,000 years of epic history, I don't think
Hmm.
it necessarily works out.
Yeah.
It's very contradictory,
Hmm.
and it just seems like Nolan wanted to make a cool twist.
And even if you're not like someone who is a classicist or super into Greek mythology, but if you're just a millennial who read the Percy Jackson books, you know that. Like you know
Yeah,
the complications of the gods' relationships with each other. And the fact that
yeah,
they only talk about Poseidon, Zeus, and Athena
yeah,
is weird because there's not the only gods people cared about.
yeah,
I mean, they're important ones,
absolutely.
obviously, but like, and especially because the setting is the ocean. So of course
Yeah,
Poseidon's gonna be a big player. We get it, you know. But like that Hermes wasn't there. Like they didn't even talk about it. Like,
yeah,
oh, I hope the message goes fast with bless Hermes or something, something like that.
yeah.
Like just like mentioning it. Like there wasn't any of that, or like we haven't really talked about the side characters in Ithaca, but like the pig herder or the cow herder, like
Oh,
they
yeah,
only talked in reference to Odysseus, which makes sense, right? Because they're like enslaved. They would have also in this world be talking about different Greek gods and about blessing the
yeah.
harvest and like
I mean,
that
the
kind of
religion would have
language.
been so
Yeah.
in like connected to who they are.
Hmm.
Their worldview would have been through this lens of, well, the gods control this and the gods do
Yeah.
that. And so if they're concerned about food, there's going to be a reference to Demeter there. If they're concerned about, yeah, like travel and, messenger, like messages and stuff like that, then there's Hermes, and so
Hmm.
it was a bit disappointing that you would take an epic that is so rich with this kind of, Greek history and Greek religion, and then not use any of that.
Hmm.
Or, use a few
Use it
selections here and there.
incorrectly to make a shocking twist,
Yeah.
which was cool until you realize everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it like credit to Nolan. It is like a really interesting
Hmm.
storytelling choice. But
Yes.
it's like it wouldn't maybe not Athena. Like if you
Yeah.
I don't know if he could have been haunted by maybe like one of the royal family members of Troy, or something. I
Mhm.
know this is me just kind of grabbing at straws,
Or
but
just being like a nameless god, just being like,
yeah.
why are you here? And she could be like, the god said this, like just be kind of
Yeah.
like third person speaking.
Yeah, like a divine
Yeah.
representation of like
And
everybody's
then
pretty bummed at how you
it,
acted.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like everyone's bummed,
Yeah.
including yourself. You'll learn about this in
Yeah.
therapy.
You're
7 years of
bummed.
it.
Yeah. Calypso will let you know. Um, but yeah, no, yeah, I agree
Mhm.
with that.
Yeah.
And I think also the point I did want to say as well is like in in like the Trojan War myths, there is it's I feel like I have to caveat so many different things by saying like, one myth says this and another says that, and the timelines
Hmm.
overlap, and yeah, yeah, yeah. And one
Hmm.
guy did this, and then another guy deleted that because he didn't like it. But but
It's a
basically,
big old Wikipedia page.
yeah, there are so many caveats and asterisks and stuff. But the only thing that I could kind of connect up with that, like Athena being angry and haunting a Greek man. So the thing it reminded me of is in the sacking of Troy. And I don't remember exactly like it's in these myths or whatever, but basically in the timeline of the sacking of Troy, there is like two key figures in this story. So there's Neoptolemus, who is the son of Achilles, and he fights on behalf of the Greeks, as you would imagine. And he is just a real piece of work, to be frank with you. He is an awful man. He is terrifying. He is evil. He is not good at all. And then the other figure in contrast is Cassandra. And she is one of the princesses of Troy. And she is the one everybody knows for being like a prophet and nobody believes her. And she's a really tragic figure. So the thing that I thought of when Nolan did this portion of the movie was that it reminded me of this scene from Myth where Cassandra, the palace is getting sacked, people are dying everywhere, and Cassandra runs to Athena's temple for safety. And so she clings onto the statue of the goddess, and she, is horribly traumatized, and she's begging for mercy. And then Neoptolemus comes into the temple, and he sexually assaults her very brutally. Um, and Athena views that as a massive transgression, rightfully so.
Hmm.
Um, and she sees that as a really, horrific act that has been perpetrated in her sacred space, because a temple is a temple.
Yeah.
It's a big religious center. You should not have acts of violence or of sexual assault or anything like that in a temple space. And so that's where Athena lashes out. Even though Cassandra is a Trojan princess, and even though the guy who committed the crime was Greek, she's still very angry because it happened in her temple. It was something so, so heinous that happened in her temple that she can't just ignore that. So that was the thing that sort of reminded me of what
Hmm.
Nolan was doing. Another act of like really horrific violence happening in Athena's temple.
Hmm.
And then her, I guess Nolan's Athena isn't necessarily angry. She's not mad, she's just
Just
disappointed.
just disappointed.
But but in my mind that's sort of comparable to those two
Hmm.
stories, so I could kind of understand maybe that's where he got it from.
Yeah.
But again, I just am not really sure it works.
It does on a surface level, which is like most of this movie,
Yeah.
Like most of it works fine, surface level. Most of it. You know?
Yeah.
The mythicness of this movie in world myth wise and religious
Mm.
wise is just confusing to me, right? Like it makes me want to
Yeah.
think deeply about it, but then when I do, I get upset because it doesn't follow its own logic.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know?
yeah, it's like he picked and he chose what
Yeah.
worked best for him from Greek
Yeah.
religion.
Towards the end of the movie, a lot of it's set in Ithaca, and like despite Tom Holland trying his best but not doing it for
Yeah.
me. I really enjoyed the Antinuous Robert Pattinson.
Yes.
He plays a
He's
scummy
so
guy
good.
so
Oh my
well.
God. Like his
Yeah.
line where he's like, "Can somebody get these beggars out of here?" I
Yeah.
like, oh, delicious. He delivers
Uh-huh.
that so beautifully.
And him and Anne Hathaway's like
Back
acting
and
and
forth.
reacting towards each other is so well done, and like it makes sense like both in world and like the power he kind of has over her, but also he knows and looked up to her husband, so like there's this weird like tension
Mm,
in that way. And then also just like as actors and people, like it worked so well. And also John Leguizamo, who plays
mm.
the pig, the
Is that
swineherder.
Eumaeus?
Yeah, you missed. Thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
Eumaeus.
I loved him. I thought
Yeah.
he did great, and like what a fun, way to have a kind of like a mentor figure, rip mentor.
Yeah,
Um,
another father figure. Yeah.
I thought it worked really well. Um, all the beggars and them having Travis Scott as the bard character. I thought great to have like a really popular rapper being that character, because it makes sense. That's, very similar to how the stories were
Mm,
told in past and how the story would have been told. And then the idea of stories and versions of stories that Odysseus gets into at his last little monologue. But
mm.
Travis Scott was such an interesting choice, I thought.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Travis Scott was in this. So when it showed him, I was like, hold up. Is that Travis Scott? Wait, what are you doing here? Because I
Right?
hadn't I hadn't heard
Mhm.
any of the news. It took me by surprise. But I think it works. Like it makes
Yeah.
sense to me because, I think Nolan went on record saying that he wanted to have these sort of modern connections to make a modern context for modern viewers.
Yeah.
And I think if you're gonna portray a bard, that is a really clever way to do it.
Yeah.
Especially a figure like Travis Scott,
Hmm.
he's
Yeah.
recognizable. And so
Hmm.
that, does a really good job of saying, like, here's the function of bards and oral storytelling,
Yeah.
in the ancient Greek world. Think of it like
Hmm.
this. So I
Hmm.
was like, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome, Travis.
Yeah, I thought that was good. Again, we've already talked about Anne Hathaway and how she knocked it out of the park consistently.
Mm,
When Odysseus comes back and that whole like battle and setup scene with the bow, the bow.
mm,
I
the
loved
bow.
the bow and the dong. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that was great. I think the battle scene, it gets a little bit silly between Antinous being like, get the spear, but also after 2+ hours of like sad PTSD guilt-ridden adventure, it is kind of nice to be like the bad guys are losing and the good guys are winning.
Yeah,
Like
finally. You
we
get to
kind
a
of
point where
needed
you're like,
it.
thank God.
Yeah.
Yes, finally
Yeah.
a win for us. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's
That
a
was
little
the
bit
one part
silly,
though
but
where Telemachus like throws the
yeah.
weapons through the floor and he's like,
That was
"Dad."
too far.
It felt like a little, an 8-year-old being like, "Catch,
Yeah.
Dad."
And
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 I'm
then
like,
Eumaeus
"Oh."
being like, "What happened?" Like, Eumaeus, you know what happened.
Yeah, you could hear it,
Yeah.
bro.
Um, but I really enjoyed that part. And then Odysseus's last like monologue, or like his meeting with Penelope before he reveals himself, I guess that monologue
Mm.
also, I thought that was probably the better part of the writing in the movie. I think it worked
Yeah.
well. And it obviously plays into the theme a lot of like the war and guilt and consequence and all that. But I think it also adds into like storytelling. And I thought it was really
Hmm.
interesting how they ended like, how's the story going to be told? I
Yeah.
thought that was really interesting. Um,
Yeah, I think like was that the dialogue though where they say like our age of bronze is coming to an end?
yeah, that part was no great.
Yeah. That bit was a bit dorky, but but ultimately what it's trying to say I think is interesting and
Hmm.
is a good patch of writing and acting.
Yeah,
Um yeah, minus the goofy
yeah.
our age of bronze.
After watching this movie twice, and all the kind of things he's saying about men and war, I'm like, yes, we get it. War bad. No likey. Like that,
Yeah.
like it wasn't new. Like it was a cool and interesting way to use this ancient story to talk about themes that are so prevalent to our real. Like I think that was awesome. But what I really thought about is how this is also kind of like Nolan being like hit the Trojan horse is really like AI. Like we humans have brought AI in to our world, and it is now going to be like kind of the end of us. And with this movie being so
Yeah.
practical effects, like this made me want to write an English paper like back at
Yeah.
uni. Like I was like about how this movie really AI is the Trojan horse, right? Like AI is
Yeah.
something we created
How
to
like the
solve a
hubris of
problem.
humanity has
Yes,
introduced something that will destroy
and it's
us.
going to
Yeah.
destroy us. And especially since Nolan is in this movie was all about old school IMAX, being
Mm.
innovative, but like in a practical sense, practical effects, limited CGI. Again, just like the big
Yeah.
things that a whirlpool. You can't really make a
Yeah.
whirlpool, like
Really
that kind of thing.
emphasizing like what humans can create,
Yeah.
with your own bare hands.
And I think once I like kind of was thinking about how that could, and I could see him thinking that because he is very against AI, unlike some other directors, Peter
Mm.
Jackson. I'm gonna come get you. I don't know, that made me appreciate the movie more, even with all my qualms with it. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I can get behind this, man. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And like I think obviously, for all my qualms with, how he's depicted the Odyssey, I think if we look at it as just like a film that Christopher Nolan has made, here are the themes, here's what he's trying to say. I think that works really well. And I
hmm
think he has said what he meant to say and it landed,
hmm
and I'm glad for it,
yeah,
basically. Because I think, to touch upon AI, I think not enough people are coming out to say, hey, this is a danger. And so I think it's nice to have a director like
hmm
Nolan who carries a lot of sway in Hollywood and a lot of sway within Western media, make this huge film about how, humanity's hubris and technological choices, can harm us in the end. I think that is
hmm
just a really interesting thesis for him to put
yeah,
forward.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
I also do want to say, just very quickly, Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy and as Clytemnestra, she was fantastic. Like
hmm
everything she did was so good.
And
And
I
I
think that's
I
great
say
casting
this,
too.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for Helen, who is like the face that, what's the,
The face that launched 1,000 ships.
thank you.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
she is gorgeous. She's like almost one of a kind. She's one of a kind gorgeous in Hollywood because unfortunately there's not
Mm,
many, ratio wise of, white women versus women of color. Like it's not great Hollywood, but she also is gorgeous and she is a great actress and she's a fun person and personality. And I
yeah.
think it just works really well
Yeah, and she
in
has a
her.
great presence on screen. And like this is, I know she's been spoken about a lot for her role as Helen of Troy, but I also feel like not enough people are giving credit to how she portrays Clytemnestra. And I say this as somebody who you know, I wrote my thesis on it. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about Clytemnestra. But I think like Lupita Nyong'o is so like haunting and so strong as Clytemnestra and able to portray like her anger at her husband, her grief for the loss of her daughter, um, just like that kind of brewing. I've been creating a plan for 10 years, since this happened, and finally you're home. I think she did everything correctly. Like
hmm
she was the best choice for both
hmm
Helen and for Clytemnestra. Um, yeah, and so I honestly I wanted more of her where, can Nolan do a film about, Agamemnon coming home and getting killed by Clytemnestra? I would watch that.
Is it like canon that they are twins or they're just sisters?
So it's interesting. I think so Helen is the daughter of Leda and the quote unquote swan, who is
hmm
Zeus. Zeus, came to Leda in the shape of a
Yeah.
swan, and then they uh conceived Helen. But it's like I think it's Helen, Clytemnestra, and two of their brothers are all born from eggs, but only Helen is like a child of Zeus.
Okay.
And then the other three are the children of, Leda's mortal husband.
Hmm.
I think it's something like that. Either way, like they're sisters, but they're not technically like
Yeah.
full sisters.
Then in that case, I think it's really an actual like it adds some nuance there for because we have this version of Helen, like her face, half her face has been
Hmm.
mutilated through war, men being horrible,
Yeah.
etc. Right? And she's the in this way, like the excuse of Agamemnon's war, right? It's like I'm going to war because they took Helen. Like it's not, like
Mm.
that's not she becomes the excuse. And I think it's interesting that they have her play Clytemnestra because that means, well, Clytemnestra is just as beautiful if they're twins, is kind of the idea here. Or, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, and so I think that adds to it, even though we only get, a few seconds of each. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
of the Hollywood casting, I think she is some of the best in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But I
Hmm.
think just as my own like personal nerdy point, I think all those portions that related to
Hmm.
Helen and Clytemnestra were phenomenally done.
Good stuff,
And I
yes.
wish I could see like a feature length film with Lupita Nyong'o as Clytemnestra, just because I think that would be a really interesting
That'd be
story,
awesome.
and she'd do it
Yeah.
justice.
Yeah. A big thing that we haven't touched on, I was just looking over my notes. We haven't really talked about the sound design and the score, which is
Mm,
well because I mean I loved it. I thought,
yeah.
I watched a lot of behind the scenes with Ludwig, because he did Sinners and he's done Black
Mm,
Panther. Like he's now like a big wig, which is awesome. And
yeah.
the fact that they have someone who has studied the lyre and like was able to like play that and they made a replica of that two-pronged flute. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, like I forget what it's called as well. But yeah, I
Yeah.
know what you mean.
But they made a replica of it and they had to kind of
Mm.
guess how the reeds worked, which I just like, as a we
It's
were both in
totally
band. I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what?
Shout out to Reed Instruments.
Shout out.
But
Uh,
yeah, I think he did fantastic. I feel like I've been on repeat saying stuff like that throughout
mhm,
this, but anyway, like nonetheless, he did a great job.
mhm.
Um,
The
and
brass
again, as a huge
instruments.
nerd, like
Hmm.
I appreciate his dedication to getting it accurate.
Yes.
And ultimately it created a really interesting, kind of soundscape to go alongside all the things,
Yeah.
Odysseus is going through.
And the themes are still there without being like overly like produced, and it felt like natural and rough, but also kind of modern at times. Like it was a really
Mm,
like I will be listening to the score a lot.
yeah.
I don't know enough to get on my top Spotify for the year, but
Yeah.
who knows? We have a long time
Yeah,
till
top
that.
artist, Ludwig.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that was just like, between the spectacle of the IMAX and these huge in real life, locations and huge set pieces for the interior stuff
Mm,
and the soundtrack, just that alone, I was just like, God, I love the
yeah.
movies.
Yeah. I love cinema. Like, I think
Yeah.
this is fantastic. It's a
Hmm.
huge technical achievement. And I
Hmm.
think like it's going to be a powerhouse year at the Oscars, because Dune 3 is coming out and the Odyssey
Hmm.
has just come out. Um, and I'm sure there'll be other really notable films from this year, but I just
I
think
bet
like it
Project
would be a
Hail Mary is gonna be up
travesty.
there.
Yeah, true.
I've not seen it
But
yet.
it'd be a travesty like if Ludwig didn't win,
Yeah.
awards for his work here.
Oh, absolutely. Like just the amount of effort of the historical aspects alone, let alone the actual melodies he ends up putting together.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
Like the
100%
work he
agree.
put into it. Yeah. He has done a fantastic job.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did want to make a note, or I did want to quickly make a point around you know, it's a bit towards the end, but basically they come to this conclusion that, you know, Odysseus and his men are the sea people. You know, there's kind of this realization of like, we are the sea peoples. We have been wreaking havoc around the Mediterranean. And I thought that was really interesting to include it because I feel like the sea peoples aren't talked about enough. And like for context, for anyone who doesn't know about the sea peoples, one, read about them, at least read like the Wikipedia page or something. It is really fascinating. But basically, they were this collection of people, so, you know, from all over the Mediterranean, that essentially were like raiding parties or pirates during the late Bronze Age. And it's heavily debated. Like, this is something also, this made me feel old because there's been a lot of like new, you know, discoveries and conclusions and stuff that have come out since I finished my degree. So I felt very old and out of the loop. But basically, there are these raiding parties that kind of went all over the Mediterranean. And a lot of people think that they were forced to do raiding due to things like famine and climate change. You know, so there is an interesting parallel with what's happening, you know, now in our
Hmm.
modern era. But so basically, like they attacked parts of Greece, they attacked parts of Egypt, they attacked parts of the Levant, et cetera, et cetera. And for a long time, people were wondering, who are these people? Like, we don't really know. Um, in recent years, though, like they have pretty much narrowed it down to say it was probably a couple of groups from Anatolia, so modern day Turkey. It was probably a couple of groups from the Levant. You know, think like the Hittites, think the Philistines. Um, but then also it was probably, you know, people from what is now modern day Sicily and Sardinia. But then it's also some people, some tribes from parts of Greece. Um, and so yeah, they all kind of banded together and just raided a bunch of different places throughout the Mediterranean because they were in a situation where there wasn't enough food. Climate change had impacted their growing cycles. You know, they were getting really desperate. And we only really know about them because the one dude who beat them, like they won every war they had, except for their fight against Ramses II of Egypt. And so he was really proud of the fact that he defeated them. So he erected a ton of monuments and he did, you know, a ton of art to say like, look at this is me defeating them. And so that's how we know about it because
Hmm.
archaeologists have found those monuments and they've, you know, they've deciphered them and they've said, oh, okay, you know, Ramsey is referring to these distinct groups of people and he's saying, okay, you know, they come from these places and they want these things. So thank you to Ramses II for letting us know about the Sea Peoples. But I thought that was kind of a ham-fisted inclusion in Nolan's Odyssey because, you know, it felt like one of those things where he wanted to say, like, I have read history books. I know that this is happening around that time. And so he kind of like forces it into the narrative and it doesn't totally work. You know, but again, it's one of those things where like I, as like a big old classics nerd, am like, well, that doesn't make sense. You know, Odysseus didn't battle Ramses II. You know, but of course there are normal people out there who aren't bothered by such things, and that's fine. So that was the only thing that I was going to say in addition to that. But in general, like the sea peoples are very interesting. Um,
Hmm.
you know, worth
Yeah.
giving a read on Wikipedia.
I mean, as far as like in the movie, I think those parts were just to add like some mystery along their way. But also, I'm like, isn't being lost at sea enough of a mystery to deal
Mm.
with? Like, just there's
Yeah.
lots of problems about being lost at sea, let alone there's gods,
Yeah.
apparently, sometimes, you know? And I think it plays into like the hubris of man of it all. It's like, oh wait,
Mm.
we're the bad guys. It's like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
that's a
war's
really good
bad.
point.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think
Yeah.
it plays into that. Um, Especially, Penelope's reaction to realizing that they are
Her husband is the perpetrator. Yeah.
yeah, I agree. It doesn't it feels like, okay, I guess we have this. Like, that's not
Yeah.
the real tension of the Odyssey. I mean, because
Yeah.
it's not a
I
part of
mean,
it.
yeah, you're totally right about how it connects up with that kind of overall, hubris of humanity and how we don't see ourselves as the baddies.
Hmm.
But I think just, to be kind of nitpicky about it, it didn't totally land. It felt like kind
Yeah.
of too many cooks in the kitchen. We've got enough going on. Odysseus is going through enough.
Hmm.
The film is already 3 hours.
Hmm.
Maybe we don't need to have that included in there.
Yeah. No, I agree. But
Yeah.
this has been so fun, Alexa.
This has been really good.
Really fun. I'm so glad that you're up for it.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
I'm really excited and very happy to talk about classics,
Yeah.
and many other things as well.
And I will say, since watching this, there's been a lot of people being like, if you liked any of this Greek mythology stuff, slash if you read Percy Jackson as a kid, like go read these retellings and reimaginings. And there are a
Yeah,
few books that like for example, Circe, that I am like, I should read that,
you should.
you know.
Circe is a great book.
Yeah. There's also another series that follows the women of Troy. Um,
Yes. No, thank you for reminding me of that. I was
mhm,
actually going to say that is a book series. If you or any of your listeners are really keen to see like a female perspective on,
mhm,
the fallout from the Trojan War, I think the first book is called The Women of Troy, something like that.
something like that. I'll
Um,
link up below.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's three books. And it does a really fantastic job. I think it follows Briseis, who is
Hmm.
the like kind of female trophy for Achilles.
Okay.
But yeah, they're fantastically written. I really recommend that.
Yeah. I'll check
Yeah.
those out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let me know if you read them because
I will.
I would also like to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. Thank you, listeners, for listening. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Read the Book First Podcast. Make sure you're subscribed to us on your preferred podcasting platform. Rate us 5 stars. If it's not 5 stars, don't worry about it. And remember, read the book first.